Hello everyone, this is Teacher Geet here, and today we'll look at how to improve your writing. Now, this is based on the IGCSE ESL Year 9 standards, so you can use that as an indicator, but writing skills are universal across the board. So I'm going to take you through a past year paper question for part 3. And I've given you an example of the answer, the story that my student wrote, and how we put it beside the marking scheme and discussed how she could improve. And then she did a draft 2. And then we even did a draft 3 together, which made the writing even better. So this is a process video. I see a lot of artists make these. Let's say they draw or they paint, they have a time lapse of all the choices they made, the strokes, the colors. And so you can really get into their mind, get into their thought process as they create this piece of art. And I thought, hey, writing is an art form as well. And writing goes through different edits, different drafts for us to see its maximum potential. And so I want to encourage your students to do the same. Don't just stick with that first story that you came up with. Just think about how you can improve and then keep going from there. And this video will really help you get into that headspace, get into that mindset of editing, getting more drafts out there, because I see all my students, during an exam, it's, high stakes, high pressure, time bound. So you're really just like having this idea and making it work and then passing up your piece of paper. But when you have the time, you really need to sit down, do one draft and then sleep on it and then come back to it and see how you can improve and how you can get that best score, the highest score. So let's learn how to have that thought process through looking at this first draft and going from there. Okay, so this is a past year question for part 3. Let me read it out. Your English teacher wants you to write a story. Your story must begin with this sentence. All the children felt excited as they got on the bus. Write your story in 100 to 200 words in an appropriate style below. Okay, I love that my student has underlined anything important from the instructions, reading the instructions, understanding the instructions. Really important to get those content marks out there. And definitely take the time to brainstorm your ideas so you have that flow, okay? For a story, I would even encourage you to brainstorm according to plot, but let's look at that as later on as we improve, okay? So just like on the surface, what my student did, she underlined these, she wrote her ideas down. Let's see, outing during summer holiday, camping in forest beside a river or stream. One girl don't know, swim, drop into the river, save her, send quickly to hospital, only get shocked and cold. Okay, these are some really good ideas. And so let's look at the story that she came up with. Okay. All the children felt excited as they got on the bus. They all were singing while the journey. Today was their summer trip. They were going for camping. They were all super excited when arrived. They followed instruction to have done their own part. They were a group of girls. There were a group of girls who appointed for catching fish in the river, and then they went too. When they reached the river, the sky turned cloudy and dark, so they decided to catch the fish quickly. Halfway catching, the sky started to rain. They ran back, but suddenly a shout went into their ears. A girl was lost. When they looked back, they found the girl fell into the river and she doesn't know how to swim. They called teacher for help and rushly bring the girl to hospital. Luckily, she wasn't had a big deal, but needed to rest for a few days. Now, off the top of my head, this is a good essay. This is a decent essay. And let's look at it according to the marking scheme. So the marking scheme will have these 4 subscales, and there'll be descriptors of what are the expectations to get 0 or 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 marks for each category. Okay, so for part 3, for content, if you're going to get 5, you need all contents relevant to the task and the reader is fully informed. Now, this is again where the instructions come into play. This one clearly wants you to start with this sentence. Don't be fancy here by adding on to this sentence or using, substitutions or different words or synonyms. No. Just write that sentence down. That shows that you understand the instruction. So my student has done that. She started with this essay, with this sentence, sorry. Of course, she did a comma and she added to the sentence, which is fine, but I wouldn't encourage that, okay? Because that might change the meaning of the sentence and you don't want that. So that's how this one works. The reader is fully informed, okay? That's about content. Content is also about developing your ideas, not just saying thing A, B, C happen. You want to, make use of details. You want to give your imagery. You want to talk about what you can see, smell, hear, touch, taste. You want to talk about what, who, where, when, how, You want to make your story richer, more complex, right? That is going to differentiate the marks from getting, say, a 3, right? Because some content will be relevant or missing and the reader isn't fully informed. Now, the content is very much connected to communicative achievement, which is, let's look at 5. Text communicates ideas clearly in a style that is generally appropriate to the task. This is all about, do we, the reader, understand your story, understand your essay, right? This is where formats are really important. Let's say you're doing a report or email, there are certain rules that go into it. Of course, a story is more about, do you have the narrative development here, which is the plot? Do you have a beginning, middle, and end? Which is very much what my student has done here. There is a flow, something happens, and then things progress from there. So that's about communicative achievement for a story. It's about that. Let's see. The reader here is very much like general audience, someone of your same age group, since it's a story, is what we would assume here, since there is no direct reader. Because in an email, they might say, oh, write this email to your teacher or write this email to your friend. And here you have to be smart. The way you talk to a friend and the way you talk to your teacher is completely different, right? That's where formal versus informal writing comes into play. The sentences you use, the words you use. But in this context, it's a story. So as long as you have that flow, the beginning, middle, and end, you should be good. Organization is about, text is well organized and coherent using a range of linking devices. Punctuation is reasonably accurate. Here you're talking about linking devices. They want to see that flow, how you connect each idea, each sentence. It's about something will happen and then what is the cause, what is the consequence of that action, right? Let's say the floor is slippery, you fall down. You can't just fall down and then somebody pours water on the floor. Like, you need a flow there, right? Linking devices, of course, here it's pointed out that if you use very basic and simple ones like and, or, because, you're going to get a lower score. So you want to use more complex ones. Of course, in a typical essay, you use furthermore, moreover. In addition, hence, as a result of, right? So you want to show more complex relationships here. Punctuation, yes. You want to have different structure of sentences. You want to have short, medium, and long sentences. So it goes back to simple sentences where it only has one idea, and then a compound sentence, more than one idea, and connected using coordinating conjunctions. And then you want more complex sentences, more than one idea again, but you're using subordinate conjunctions, and you putting in a lot of details in the middle, in the beginning or the end of the sentence, right? There's a lot of commas. Yes, the internet is your best friend here. I'm just saying a lot of things, but if any of these things interest you or you feel like you need much more help there, you can definitely Google these words and these concepts out. And there are so many websites, so many videos out there. I'll be making more, but there's always, you can always start today. So the last one is language. So if you want a 5 here, you have to use a range of vocabulary appropriate for the task. So they want to see whether you have a wide database for words, you know, many words, right? And even if you put in a complex word, they want range. Let's say a simple word is big, right? And then if you want 3 marks, you want it to be more complex, you would say huge. But then to show off that you know many words, right? You've mastered this. You can use words like humongous or ginormous in the suitable context, right? Let's say you keep using the word ginormous throughout your essay. That shows that you don't have a range. You know one big word, but you don't know synonyms for that word or different words that could take its place. So range is about them wanting variety. They want different things. They want you to showcase differences. So you're talking about vocabulary, so you can use big words and you can use small words, is how you put them all together. Here is also where they're looking at your grammatical structures with good control. They don't want perfection. They know you're year 9 for this one. They know you're 15. They just want you to be good for your level, and you'll get that 5 marks. They're not stingy about that. So grammar here, very important in the story, is about your tense, right? If you want to use past, present, or future tense, and even under tense, even under past tense, there's 4 different kinds, like simple past tense, past continuous tense, past perfect tense, past perfect continuous tense. They're all talking about the past, but it has nuances. It's about different situations in the past. You use a different format. So you need to, grammar is very much like math, like there's a format, and if you can key in that format for the right situation, you're good to go. So even for your tenses, you really got to double down and know these differences and these formulas. That shows good control. Again, if you slip up and you make a mistake here and there because of you speeding your test, it's fine. But if they're seeing a mistake, an error just continuously pop up, that means you haven't mastered that grammatical structure. So look into that. See, occasional errors do not impede communication as well. So if the examiner understands your overall general meaning, they will be fine with it. You can still get 5 marks. So again, it's a sliding scale for descriptors. The best mark for each subscale is 5. See, if you use, only everyday vocabulary or simple grammatical structures, or your errors are noticeable, so you'll be bogged down to 3. So it's about that range, that control, the complexity, it gets you all the way to 5. Okay, now that we understand that, me and my student, we just went through her essay and we're looking into, I asked her what marks would she give herself. So as a student, you really need to know your marking scheme. If your teacher hasn't gone through that, or at least your teacher needs to tell you what are her expectations. What does 5 marks for each category look like to her? And you need to get that in your programmed in your head, right? So this is just a quick recap of this marking scheme here. And so my student and me quite lenient here. For content, we gave 4 because my student pointed out that, you know, her beginning was really long, but then towards the end, you can really tell that it was rushed. She didn't give many details for the ending. It was just like one sentence. And so she said she would make it more balanced in the future. Other reasons why, I think that was about, yeah, it was about the pacing of plot, right? It's actually really hard to write a really good short story in around 120 words. I know that in IGCSE, word count is very much like a guideline. Even if you go above or below, the examiner needs to read every single word on the page and they'll give a mark accordingly. So you're fine if you don't strictly adhere to it, but you don't want to make more mistakes, or you don't want to have too little that they can't really grasp how good your writing skills are, you know? That's the issue, writing too little, or if you write too much and you make more mistakes. Yeah, so that's something you have to look out for as well. Okay, so that was why she gave herself 4, I believe, for content. For communicative achievement, you know, the story, the one I read to you, generally easy to understand, right? We know what's going on. Again, I believe she gave herself 4 because of plot as well. She could have added more details as well here. And then for organization, she gave herself 3 marks because she couldn't really notice herself using any linking words. It's very basic linking words, you know, and all, because, but not very much more complex linking words. Of course, organization, you know, it's about how you connect ideas, right? So your teacher is also looking for, are you using pronouns, right? You're not just using the same name over and over again, which leads me to the point of she didn't name anyone here, and she noticed that, right? She noticed that she didn't name anyone, which is something she could improve on. She kept saying the girl, right? A girl. So she couldn't give any pronouns, right? If you use a name, you can also use a substitution like a girl, right? Or you can use a pronoun like she. So you want to show that connection as well. So that's another way she could have improved, naming characters and having that linking words, or even like just cohesive devices throughout her essay. Different kinds of sentences as well could have been improved. Some sentences were way too long. I think that's how we talk normally, right? That's why there's some students, they do a lot of commas because that's how talking happens. But then in your essay, you want to be able to have short sentences that are dramatic, or longer sentences that give more information. You know, it's a myth that longer sentences means you're a more complex and better writer. That's not necessarily true. You want variety. You want to be able to use any kind of sentence to be most effective in conveying your impact and message of your story. Okay, so we gave 3 here. For language, I believe there are some grammatical errors in terms of tenses here, right? Turn cloudy, so they decided to, when you put to there, the infinitive decided is already the past tense, so decided to catch the fish quickly, right? So there are some grammar mistakes here, tense mistakes here. Let's see. Yep, she doesn't know how to swim. This one is more she didn't know how to swim, right? Yeah, you also want to look at your subject-verb agreement here. You know, a singular noun, you know, you're going to use is or was. A plural noun, you're going to use are or were, you know, even those kind of, like, does your noun match with your verb in terms of, you know, pronouns or singular, plural, and all that. So that's your subject verb agreement. So she made some mistakes there. Some of the words she used isn't suitable. It's an attempt at being complex, which is great. But see, the word rushly, we don't generally use this in English, right? We would say quickly, but not rushly, right? So here is an issue there. Like the word pointed, there were a group of girls were pointed. I think she meant appointed. But still, appointed is very formal. It's more like I appointed a president, right? So better word here would be delegated, right? So here we're looking at the words you've used and whether they are suitable. They were all super excited when they arrived. You know, there are some words that she should have put in. They follow instruction to have done their own part. So upon deeper discussion, my student pointed out that she wanted to say that they all had their own tasks. So that was something that we could agree on. So yeah, here we're looking at whether the words you've used is suitable. They ran back, but suddenly a shout went into their ears. This one, we might change the word as well, shout, to something maybe more suitable, like scream, right? So you're looking at the words you've used and seeing if they are suitable, whether you can use different words to convey a message. And then you're just looking through your essay at the tense. And what else? Yeah, vocabulary, grammar. Yep. Okay, so this is the first draft, you know, she just did it in 20 minutes. Perfectly great, perfectly good for that amount of time. And so what was the improvements we discussed? We said that we need more pacing for the plot. You know, the exposition, the beginning needs to be smaller so that she can have more details at the end. We said, hey, you know, set the scene, you know, have your characters have names so you can give them more importance and agency. We talked about just going through the tenses and making sure that's right, and even using more suitable words. Yep. So that's what we discussed, right? And then we really looked at the plot structure. Yes, let's go into that. A lot of the times in class, your teacher will teach you about it in terms of a roller coaster ride. You know, a story has very much an exposition where you set the scene, the place, you know, what's around you and the characters in the picture, right? Their personalities, their flaws. And then rising action is usually where a problem is introduced. What is the problem? And then climax is the height, the most dramatic point in the story. And then falling action is ultimately how you solve the problem. And then the end, the resolution is that you want to show, you know, character development, or like through this experience, something must have changed, even the smallest of ways. So you want to show that maybe a character grew up, character learned something, or the world has changed in some way. So you want to show that, right? It's pretty simple. Gotta memorize this plot, especially if you're writing narrative development stories. And I would even here, I would suggest when you brainstorm for a story, try to brainstorm it with this roller coaster line in mind. And then so you can say, okay, what's going to happen here in the exposition, what's going to happen in rising action, what's going to happen in climax. So you just write your ideas according to this graph, according to this plotting graph, right? That's another suggestion for you. So we brainstormed more about how she could improve, and so she was thinking a lot about the characters, naming her characters, and that, oh, they're going for camping. She had this idea that these kids were fishing. I don't really know if kids like fish nowadays during camps, but hey, it might be a Girl Guide, Boy Scout type situation. So you know what? If it works, right? I'm not gonna tell you, you know, that something isn't wrong as long as it's logical. is good. And then rising action, we named her Jessica. And then we talked about how maybe Jessica is careless, right? And then we also talked about this idea of foreshadowing, which is when you plant clues in the beginning of your essay that pays off at the end. And I talked about a lot about how you should show and not tell. You know, don't just tell me that your character is careless. Show through their actions. You know, your readers are smart. They can understand, they can infer the meaning of something through actions that characters make. And then climax, you know, we're talking about the most dramatic point is where my student was like, hey, we'll place the fact that she fell into the river as the climax. That makes sense. That's suspense, you know, that's tension there. And then falling action, how do you solve the problem? Saving her, you know, taking her to hospital, which is what we wanted to expand on, right, in the future. And then resolution, how has she changed? You know, since we were talking about Jessica's character flaw being that she's careless, we were like, okay, so by the end of the story, maybe she becomes more careful, right? So this is how you can brainstorm for stories with this plot structure. And so she got another 20 minutes, and this is the new draft that she came up with. So let me read it to you. Draft 2. All the children felt excited as they got on the bus. Today was their summer camp, located on a hill. All of them were distributed tasks. Jessica was appointed to catch fish with the other 3 members. When they walked there, the sky started to turn cloudy and dark. Jessica walked into the river and nearly fell due to her carelessness, then continued catching fish as fast as she could. When they had got 5 fishes, they went back to the camp, but suddenly they heard a scream from the river and turned back. Jessica wasn't with them. They ran to the river and found Jessica had fallen into the water. She was shouting for help. However, they're not there to save her by themselves. Therefore, one girl ran back asking for help. Teacher came and saved her up from the river, but when she was saved up, she was already in a coma. Eventually, the teacher gave her first aid and sent her to the hospital. When she was woken up from the coma, her teacher visited her, but her face still looked as pale as a ghost. Luckily, the doctor said she wasn't a big deal, but needed to rest to recover. Okay. Going back, we talked about how she's improved it. She's improved the essay. She's named her protagonist, that means main character, right? Her name's Jessica. And I loved how she foreshadowed at the beginning when she said, Jessica walked into the water and nearly fell due to a carelessness. She planted this seed, this idea here, setting up clues that will be paid off as the story progresses. Really good skill to have in a story. She shortened her exposition so she would have more of a word count or time to do the resolution, you know, or the falling action. And then she has more specific details. Yes, I talked about imagery just now, but another thing that really makes stories like, you know, blossom is figurative language, where you compare things to other things that you've experienced or that you've heard of to give it more oomph, to give it more depth. And yeah, you can use similes, you know. She did use one here, as pale as a ghost, you know, she's comparing that. So she used a simile, you know, you can use metaphors, personification, alliteration. Oh, there are so many here. Repetition, right? So you want to have more lyrical, pretty writing as well, especially when it's a story, you know. Imagery and figurative language, so important for a story. And we noticed that she's changed some words as well. Like, remember we talked about her sentence here where it was like, they follow instruction to have done their own part. So through our discussion, she changed that to, you know, all of them were distributed tasks. Again, I talked about how delegated might be a better word than distributed, and then pointed became appointed. Again, I talked about how maybe you can use a different word for that. or you can put this into one sentence, right? And use the word delegated. Yeah, shout turned into scream here. And then she even used more linking words like however, eventually, even though having a coma is pretty serious. So I don't know if this is the direction she wants to take her essay into. I also talked about how, you know, she only named Jessica, but this teacher seems to be like a very important character as well, because it's the hero of the story in a way, like who saved her. So we talked about how we could give this teacher a name and more agency from the beginning of the story, maybe. Yes, having more imagery, like really setting the scene better in the beginning, talking about what you can see around you in this camp site, and what you can see, smell, taste, touch, and then other things. Yes, yeah, even the pacing, it's better now, it's improved, but we could still add more details, and we could still explain how exactly she was saved, right? Because now it just says saved. Okay, so this is what we can do. But of course, to reflect her growth and improvement, we talked about what we would give for each category again for the marks. And this time, it's better in terms of development of ideas. So we'll say, hey, content 5. Yeah, you can get different marks for each category. You might be really good at content 5, maybe language can get like 1. Like it doesn't really impact other categories. You can be really good at one part, and then you can notice that, oh, this is my strength and this is an area I can improve on, and that's fine. So sometimes you might get 5 for a category and then 2 for another category, right? And that's normal, that's natural. And so here we gave her content 5, because it's all content is relevant to the task, the reader is fully informed. Of course, even though we're giving 5 here for a year 9 student, of course, you can always improve the essay. You can always improve something. You can have like 20 drafts or something. At one point, you just have to be happy with it and put it into the world. And then communicative achievement, is still very easy to understand, and it feels like I'm reading a story. It has a beginning, middle, end. In fact, it has more of that plot structure that we talked about. So 5, organization, she was like, yeah, I still need to put in more, cohesive devices. So that's like one of the areas she really needs to improve on. And then language, she has improved in her grammar, in her words, the words that she's choosing, but there's always room for improvement here. So, okay, now that we've read her second draft and looked at all the ways she's improved, I'm really proud of her. That's great. And then we've also talked about further ways that we can improve this essay. So after that, we wrote an essay together. And speaking of togetherness and teamwork, sometimes you want your friend, peer reviews are great. You want your friend, peer feedback, your friend to read your essay and give you feedback on how you can improve. And then you can do another draft. And then when you give your teacher and she gives you other ways you can improve, you can do a draft 3, right? Or you can do more drafts, right? So it's actually also more fun to write essays with your friends and brainstorm ideas together, because you can bounce ideas off of each other. So I would highly recommend you do that. So let's look at what me and my student came up with together. Okay, all the children felt excited as they got on the bus. Today was their summer camp located nearby a river. Miss Marshall was the teacher in charge and was worried about Jessica, who had overslept and arrived late to the gathering. In fact, Miss Marshall was worried about all the students but was confident in her athletic build and lifeguard training from university. When they arrived on the camping grounds, the students felt refreshed by the cool, cloudy weather, lush green trees, the sound of birds chirping, and river water flowing. All the students were delegated tasks, Jessica having to catch fish with 3 other members. As they walked to the river, Jessica, who was excitedly skipping about, almost fell due to slippery rocks. Jessica's friends nagged her to be more careful. As they set about catching fish, the sky grew darker and darker. The 4 students quickened their pace and finished their tasks in record speed. Suddenly, they heard a scream. As they shriveled around, Jessica was nowhere in sight. Her 3 panicked teammates started shouting for help. The commotion attracted Miss Marshall and she rushed to the scene. Upon clocking that Jessica was missing, Miss Marshall waded into the river and spotted a flailing Jessica. She grabbed Jessica and brought her back to safety. However, the girl was slowly losing consciousness and was as pale as a ghost. With a quick thinking, the teacher performed CPR on Jessica and was some long, agonizing seconds before Jessica spluttered water out of her mouth. After that, an ambulance was called and Jessica was taken to the hospital. In the weeks that followed, Jessica started to be a more observant and careful student due to her accident. It was the worst way to learn a lesson, but she was thankful to Miss Marshall for saving her. Okay, see how the story has improved so much since draft 1 to draft 3, right? And let me take you through our thought process. So we wanted to save up words. We wanted to take out, you really want to delete anything that doesn't move the story along, and you want to add things that add detail to the important parts of the story, right? So here, on her first sentence, she talked about how the summer camp was located on a hill, but my suggestion was that we should talk about the river really quickly in the story because the river is such an important setting piece because she almost drowns, right? So I put that in right here so we don't have to worry about describing that later on. And then we also talked about what the teacher's name would be. And my student talked about how she knew this teacher, Miss Marshall, who was really strong and athletic. And we were like, oh my God, that's the perfect type of character to cast in this role, right? So you want to even have a name that matches the personality of your character to give this kind of atmosphere and vibe to your story, right? And we already explained how, she's strong and that she has lifeguard training. So it makes sense later on when she saves the day, right? You want to set that scene. You want to set the backgrounds of your characters. Even here, we set that Jessica overslept. So you can already infer that she's a free-spirited student, who is a little clumsy and careless at times, right? Right in the beginning, we've done exposition really well, right? We've set the characters here, like the 2 main characters, their personalities through showing and not telling. We talked about actions here, right? Or even how you describe their figure, right? Their hair or their clothes or their characteristics. And then organization is also about paragraphing, which my student has done from the beginning. So it's where you stop and paragraph. A different paragraph can be explaining something different, right? Maybe each plot point can be a different paragraph, right? Paragraph 1 here, full exposition, but the exposition seeps into paragraph 2 where we're setting the scene with imagery for what you can see, the place. And it's so much more prettier, right? You feel like you're in that place when you talk about what's around you, what you feel, what you can hear, right? This is called imagery or sensory detail, where you use all your senses, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, your skin to feel your surroundings and then write it into your story so the characters feel like they're in that time and place. Okay? Okay, so we did that with this first sentence. And then, yes, we straight up talked about how, okay, tasks are delegated, they have to catch the fish. So we didn't spend many sentences or many words on that. And then foreshadowing, right? Which is something my student already mastered in draft 2. But here we just added more detail, right? How likely are you to fall if you're skipping, right? More likely, right? So we put, okay, skipping, and then let's use more specific adjectives and adverbs, right? And verbs as well, right? So this one is an adverb, right? adverb that describes the verb of skipping. So, this shows that you have a wide vocabulary. Okay, and then we give reasons because the rocks were almost slippery, right? Yep. So this makes the foreshadowing more believable and more natural, more organic. And then I also talked about how we can't neglect the side characters. They also react to the world that we are in. So it makes sense. If you almost fall down, your friends wouldn't just ignore you, they would nag. And then we use some repetition here. The sky grew darker and darker so that our readers can infer that, oh, it's about to rain. Yeah, we don't have to tell that. We can show it, right? Show, don't tell, baby. And then the 4 students quicken their pace. Okay. And then, yes, more linking words, right? Suddenly. And look, this sentence is super short, but it creates that drama and tension. Suddenly, they heard a scream. Full stop. When you do a short sentence with full stop for dramatic moments, it hits right. It's like, oh no, what's that scream? Where is it? Right? Some big words here. Shrivel, it's like moving left and right. She was nowhere in sight. See how this paragraph ends in suspense, right? And then I talked about how we don't really want to waste time saying that the students were walking back to camp and then they walked to the screaming girl and then they walked back to find the teacher. These are all exposition. These are all sentences that are unnecessary. You want to be quick. That, like, the point here is that they want help to come to them. So I was like, okay, let's just say they started screaming for help, shouting for help, and then Miss Marshall shows up, right? And then I said, should Miss Marshall jump into the river and all? But then waterfalls, like river-esque situations, are quite shallow. So my student was like, no, I think she just walks into it. Then I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. So we use the word waded here. And Jessica's there flailing. And then we said, okay, she brings her back. See, another complex linking word here. However, she was losing consciousness. We put in that simile that we really liked from draft 2 here. And then we said, okay, we want to give detail. How truly was she saved? And then we were thinking about lifeguard skills, and lifeguards learn how to do CPR and also like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and how to grab someone and like you know swim to the shore, kind of. So we were like, okay, so let's say she did CPR. And then to go drag out the tension, we said nothing happened for a few seconds. And yeah, we couldn't say nothing happened for a few minutes. That would put her life in danger, right? So we said seconds, but then we use these kinds of suitable, what are these adjectives, right? To show you the gravity of the situation, how bad it is, right? And then she spluttered water. You can infer that she's okay. Um, and then after that, an ambulance was called, right? And then we took out the whole coma thing because that's intense. Like, you don't really get a coma from almost drowning. You could, but we didn't want to take this story to that dark direction because it's quite a short story, and you do want to explore really dramatic, really intense moments in your story. So at the end, we said, okay, let's put in how she's changed, right? Okay, now she's a more careful student. And then just with a bit of humor at the end, where it's like, oh my God, you don't really want to learn a lesson this way, but hey, this is the story we wrote, and that's where we're going. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed the process video. I'm trying to make more. So if you have essays that you would like me to, give this kind of feedback to, so you can improve, just like me brainstorming with you, helping you get that thought process into the picture of how to, check all these boxes for the marking scheme and to improve your writing. There's a Google link in my bio, in the box below. Click on that, give me your essay, and let's work on it. Like, I'll create a video for you. And yeah, and that's about it for this episode 1. Hoping there are more. draft videos here. I just hope you understand that, writing takes time and energy as well, that your first draft is not, that's it's beautiful on its own, but you can improve it over time, and that's how it should be. So that's about it for today. I believe in you all. I trust you all, and it's going to be great. Bye bye.